Part 345. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3452. The stall owner glanced at the people behind Joe Man, and saw that they were imposing and they were all accompanied by guards, so he didn't force himself, muttered a few words and pulled Tian Ma Pa back. Seeing that Joe Man turned around and was about to leave, he couldn't bear to give up on the customer who had already asked the price, so he hurriedly stopped her and said, "A drop of money is fine." Joe Man turned his head to look at him, glanced at the gastrodia elata on the ground, turned around and left, and after taking 2 steps, he said again, that's all, I'll give you 300 coins. Joe Man raised his eyebrows and gave Bai Shan and the others a smug smile, then turned his head with a stern face, 300 wen is still a bit expensive. Stall holder. But forget it, meeting is fate, and it is also fate that we met in the southern border of Dajin, so I bought it. Stall owner, I'm so angry, what should I do if I suddenly don't want to sell it? Joe Man had already counted the money and gave it to him, and asked, do you have any other medicinal materials here? Seeing him pointing at other herbs on the booth, Joe Man shook his head, not these, they belong to your southern border alone, or are relatively rare in other places. The stall owner asked, do you want worms? He said, we have a lot of poisonous insects here. Poison, and medicine are not separate. Sometimes poison can be medicine, and medicine can be poison, so insects are also medicine. Joe Man was very interested, so he left in no hurry, and squatted down to chat with him. I know, the most common one is grasshopper. It is poisonous, but it can cure malaria. The stall owner was taken aback, sat up slightly, and looked at Joe Man in surprise. Can grasshoppers cure malaria? That's right, use grasshoppers from the Dragon Boat Festival, dry them in the shade, grind them into powder, and take them with wine on the day of the onset of the disease. If the disease is serious, eating it 3 times will almost heal you. The stall owner had a look of disbelief. Really? He looked Joe Man up and down, frowned and said, lady, don't talk nonsense if you don't know medical skills. If someone who doesn't know how to listen to it, use it as a secret recipe and delay the treatment, it will kill people. After thinking for a while, Joe Man nodded and said, yes, the symptoms are different, and the medicines used are somewhat different, and most people still can't tell the difference between malaria and dysentery. She brought the subject back. Let's continue talking about the special bugs here, she said. I heard that the snow mountains here don't melt all the year round, and there is a kind of bug called snow silkworm on it, which is non-toxic and cold in nature, and can be cured. Internal heat and thirst, detoxification, do you have it here? The stall owner was silent for a while and then said, lady, this is Annan City, the snow mountain is far away, I don't have it here. Although it's far away, it's in the Liazi department, and it's the largest city in the Liazi department. There should be such souvenirs, right? Joe Man wanted this thing a long time ago. Even if she couldn't see the living one, she would have the dead one. Satisfied, I heard that this thing tastes very good, very sweet. The stall owner said seriously, no. Joe Man regretted, is there a butterfly? She said, I heard that drying in the shade can treat children with prolapse of the anus. The stall owner was expressionless, no. Bai Shan held back his smile and pulled her up, let's go, let's look elsewhere. The stall owner watched them leave and silently closed the stall. Bai Shan led Joe Man away, and asked with a smile, just because he overcharged the price, are you embarrassing him? Of course not. I was really interested at first, but then I thought he might be more than just a drug stall owner. Hearing this, Bai Shan looked back and saw that the stall owner's original place was empty. He raised his eyebrows. Yinju also said, maybe it's the same as we set up a street stall before. It's just curiosity, and it doesn't make a living from it. Joe Man, but we didn't cheat anyone. They set up street stalls, and the prices they open are all very reasonable. Bai Erlang was not interested in strangers. He looked around and asked, there doesn't seem to be any restaurants around here, where should we go for dinner? Mingda, didn't you just eat rice in a bamboo tube? Let's go shopping and find something to eat. Bai Erlang, but I'm already hungry again. Bai Shan sniffed, shook his head and said, I don't smell food, there should be no food around here. The guide was also a little confused, and after identifying the direction at last, he said, we have to go back, and we can turn a corner at the other end to enter a street, where there are a lot of food. Yin Yu frowned, going back. Zhou Man looked left and right, and finally pulled Mingda and walked to the left. I know where it is. A few people were taken aback, and hurriedly followed. She led the people into a small alley, and the alleys were crisscrossed, except for the walls of the houses, but Zhou Man acted as if he had been here before, leading them to turn a few corners, around 2 alleys, and finally through an alley go out. Once out of the alleyway, the bustle will come. This place is completely different from the other side. The stalls on both sides are full of food, and there are various restaurants in the back. The people here yelled in words they didn't understand. Some people saw Zhou Man and immediately waved to them enthusiastically, regardless of whether they could understand or not, they waved to them with a bright face anyway. Bai Erlang was dumbfounded. How did you know you came out? The 2 guides were also dumbfounded. How could they be more familiar than those who have been here before? Zhou Man proudly said, I'm smart. Bai Erlang didn't want to ask any more. He looked around and took them to the most luxurious looking restaurant. Eat something better. You can never go wrong with a place like this. Bai Shan and the others obeyed him. Since money can be used here, then they are not short of money, and they still have several bolts of cloth and satin, which should be worth a lot of money. After entering the restaurant, the shopkeeper took a look at them, and immediately stepped forward to greet them. Do the guests want to eat or stay in the restaurant? Hearing that he spoke fluent official Chinese, Bai Shan raised his eyebrows and asked, is the shopkeeper a member of the Liaison department? The shopkeeper said with a smile, yes, the guest officer thinks what the official said is right. Bai Shan nodded. The shopkeeper invited them upstairs, and said, the young one has been to the Central Plains before, so the official language is good. He saw that the clothes of several people were all well dressed, and the guards behind them were strong and capable, so he didn't dare to neglect, and directly invited them to sit down in the private room by the window on the 2nd floor, and introduced the dishes to them personally. We still have food here. The wine made from highland barley is somewhat different from the wine in the Central Plains. Every guest who comes to our place will taste it. Do you want to try it? Although none of them liked drinking, Bai Shan still nodded and said, let's have a pot. Come here, always have a taste, even if it is a long experience is good. After ordering, Bai Shan left the shopkeeper's words, are there many Han people in Annan City? The shopkeeper said, a lot. He said with a smile, in recent years, the emperor of Jin dynasty has been kind and often rewarded us from the Liaison department. Our chief and the officials from Dajin have cooperated to build official roads. Once the official roads are opened, business exchanges are convenient, and more people come here gone. The shopkeeper was also very curious about them. While pouring tea for them, he picked up the teapot and asked with a smile, the distinguished guests are also here for business. I haven't seen them before. I saw many book friends asking about the newly published book in the comment area. It was the Oracle Bone Inscriptions essay competition that Zuzi participated in at the starting point. It only had a chapter of more than 300 words. The title of the book was Nian Cheng, which was not considered a new book. But now that it's said, let's ask for a collection and recommendation ticket for it by the way. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 3453. Bai Shan said with a smile, The first time I took this commercial route in southern Xinjiang was also because of His Majesty's great grace. I heard that the imperial court sent a large number of new rice seeds to the Liazi department. The climate here is suitable for growing rice. Rice seeds, it will definitely save a lot of fields, and it will be very good for planting mulberry and tea at that time. We just come and have a look in advance, maybe we can find a cooperative tribe. The shopkeeper's eyes flickered slightly, and he asked, is the guest officer in the cloth business or the tea business? Bai Shan smiled and said, both are slightly involved. No wonder they are both excellent. The shopkeeper said with a smile, you have a good eye. Our Liazi department has produced a lot of grain in the past 2 years, and there is indeed a lot of land left, but the production of fabrics requires craftsmanship, so there are fewer mulberry and silkworms, but more tea. He said with a smile, our soil is good and the tea is delicious. Would you like to try our tea? Bai Shan responded with a smile. The shopkeeper immediately asked the buddy to bring some of each kind of tea from the restaurant. There are so many types of tea that the entire table is directly covered. I heard that the tea produced by each tribe is slightly different, not to mention the quality of tea of the same variety. Joe Man and the others stared blankly. Shopkeeper, is this a restaurant or a tea house? The shopkeeper said with a smile, it's just doing some small business in spare time to earn some money for drinks, and it makes the nobles laugh. With such a complete range of tea and the enthusiasm of the other party, it is no wonder that everyone believes that he is an amateur. Joe Man was about to speak when he glanced at the stall owner carrying a bag into the restaurant downstairs, raised his eyebrows slightly, then switched to the window on the other side, and sure enough saw a person coming in downstairs. But the other party didn't stay downstairs, but was led to the second floor by the staff who knew the way. Joe Man pointed at him and the shopkeeper and smiled, shopkeeper, your distinguished guest has arrived. The shopkeeper looked in the direction she was pointing at, and when he saw the stall owner, he was stunned for a moment and asked, do you recognize Wu Jin? Bai Shan sat up slightly, Wu? Is it Wu or Wu? The shopkeeper smiled when he heard the words, and knew that they were not familiar. It's a witch. Wu Jin is a witch from the Yunqian tribe. He is very powerful. The Yunqian tribe is only a middle-level tribe, but his witchcraft can be equal to the witches from the big tribes. Joe Man was curious, witchcraft, how does it compare? The shopkeeper, only the witch can know. Bai Shan asked, do wizards often come to Annan City? I don't come here often, the shopkeeper paused. He wanted to win their business, so he lowered his voice and said, but recently, famous wizards may all come to Annan City. Bai Shan, why? The shopkeeper whispered, the chief's wife is ill and has been dying for a long time, so the chief has invited many witches, and there are still some who have not been invited. When they hear that his wife is sick, they will come to have a look. In case they can pray for her, that's something to be proud of. Joe Man asked curiously, what is the disease? The shopkeeper shook his head, I don't know, this is the chief's family business, how can common people like us know? Bai Shan and Joe Man looked at each other and smiled, and they were just trying to deceive others. Who would believe that he was an ordinary commoner who could open such a good restaurant on this street and attract tea business? But Bai Shan didn't ask any more, knowing that these were enough. If they asked again, they would lose their foundation. A group of people tasted the tea brought by the shopkeeper, and selected 3 types of tea that tasted good, but they did not make a decision with the shopkeeper. Bai Shan excused to take another look and postponed the matter. After they were full of wine and food, the group of people walked out of the restaurant slowly. Yin Ru turned to ask Bai Shan, are you really planning to start a tea business? Bai Shandao, it's not easy to go in and out of southern Xinjiang. We brought quite a few people with us. It's not a bad idea to bring some tea when we go back. Furthermore, Brother Joe's tea business is doing a lot now, so he might be interested. Let's take some tea out for him to taste, and also see the reaction in the market. Bai Shan Xiao asked, why, is it troublesome? Yin Or shook his head, no, it's just been away for a long time, and it's the first time I see you are interested in bringing goods. Bai Shan and Zhou Man sighed, because our money is spent a little too quickly. Yin, are you short of money? He had a look of disbelief, but he still said, if you need money, I have it here, and I will give you some. That's not necessary, Bai Shan quickly refused. For us, making money is just a matter of passing along, and it's not troublesome, so why do we need your money? Zhou Man, yes, my brother is still clear about it, so don't give money to others indiscriminately in the future. Bai Er on the side said, the only others he can give money to are me, besides you. Why don't you ask my opinion? Bai Shan glanced at him, do you have an opinion? That's not true. Isn't the family's property always making money? I don't want to go to the effort. Bai Erlang turned his head and said to Zhou Man, besides, it's not easy for you to make money. There are ready-made money-making opportunities in front of you. Go and take a walk around the chief's house and heal his wife's illness. He will definitely give you a consultation fee. It's not as good as the money we can earn after inspecting, buying, and transporting, and finally selling it. In fact, Zhou Man also wanted to go, not for making money, but because he was curious about what illness the chief's wife had and how the wizards would treat it. Bai Shan saw her movement, and asked with a smile, want to go? Zhou Man nodded, then shook his head again, I don't know what kind of man this chief is. This is southern Xinjiang. If he can't cure him, he will take his anger out on us. Don't worry, Bai Shan said, if it's a big deal, we'll show our identities. Does he still dare to detain us to embarrass us? Zhou Man thought about it, nodded and said, okay, it's late today, let's go and have a look tomorrow. She turned her head and said to Yin Or the three of them, you guys are waiting for us outside, you can go shopping around. Yin Ju thought for a while and said, I'm a little tired, I will rest at the inn tomorrow. Mingda said, I still want to go to the bazaar I went to today, and have a look at their porcelain and fabrics. So we all set our itinerary for tomorrow. Zhou Man, do you think I should send a greeting card to the chief's mansion in advance? No need, you didn't reveal your identity. You are the former doctor of the number 1 middle school. It's no wonder people would accept your post. Bai Erlang gave her a bad idea, go directly to the door and recite a passage of plain questions for him. It should lead you in. Bai Shan, shouldn't the top priority be to choose a good name for yourself? He said, your name is famous all over the world. Even though this is remote southern Xinjiang, I paid attention to it when I was in the restaurant just now. People in the lobby occasionally mentioned your name when they mentioned the Central Plains. Obviously you are also very famous here. Zhou Man's focus was, can you understand the dialect here? Bai Shan, they speak official language. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3454. Zhou Man sat at the table and asked them, what name do you think I should choose? Bai Shan, Thursday. Zhou Man turned to look at him. Bai Shan spread his hands and said, this name is the most appropriate. You are good at 8, but it is very different from the previous name. Others will not easily think of you. Zhou Man hesitated, I don't think it sounds good. You are a scholar after all, so can't you come up with a better alias? Yin Ru said, I think it sounds nice, maybe it's not graceful enough, so I'll call it Zhou Ba Niang. Zhou Man, it feels even worse. Bai Erlang and Mingda also echoed, this name sounds nice. Zhou Man looked at them suspiciously, and in the end, they succeeded in deciding on the name with more wins. Early the next morning, Zhou Man and the others were not in a hurry to go to the chief's mansion, but went to the morning market first, and after eating the special breakfast food here, they wandered towards the chief's mansion under the guidance of the guide. The chief is the leader of the Liazi tribe, but there are many tribes under the Liazi tribe, not only the Liao people, but also the Pu people. There are many tribes and different nationalities. The chief is the big leader elected by each tribe. It is said that they are elected, but in fact they are selected. Generally, the patriarch of the largest tribe of the Liazi tribe is elected. After fighting for the position, it is reported to the court and sealed by the emperor. And the mansion here is naturally also the residence of the sealed leader. Bai Shan said to them, after our dynasty quelled the rebellion in various places, the Liazi department surrendered to our Jin dynasty, but the internal struggle is still fierce. The head of the Liazi department has changed 7. Zhou Man couldn't help being surprised. This speed is almost 4 times faster than ours. Now this leader, I vaguely remember that it was changed 3 years ago. At that time, the matter was quite big, and it was discussed several times at the court meeting, so Zhou Man also listened to it, but he didn't understand enough. Yes, and they are not from the same family. There are 3 tribes and 4 families in total. The current chief was selected by the tribes 3 years ago. The guide couldn't help but look at Bai Shan. He didn't expect him to understand it in such detail. Before arriving at the place, the guide whispered, the grandfather of this new chief was once also a leader, the first leader of the Liazi department after he surrendered to us, but he was killed within 2 years, his son was also killed. At that time, the new chieftain was only 12 years old, and he took away a tribe and hid in the mountains. Only then did he escape, but he did not expect that he would bring that tribe back to the tribe. Not only snatched the tribe from the other hand, but also launched a rebellion to kill the previous leader, and was elected as the new leader. The guide whispered, so this chief is ruthless, it's better for the nobles to be humble, so as not to conflict with him. In fact, the guide didn't want to have an intersection with the chief, who was moody, who knew what would happen. Zhou Man nodded and said, we will be careful. But she turned her head and asked Bai Shan, since he is a rebellious leader, why did His Majesty seal him up so quickly? She vaguely remembered that there seemed to be a quarrel at the Dachao meeting, but she was going to the military for technical exchanges, so she didn't pay attention to it. Guide, what do you call being careful? And this question is asking, can Mr. Bai Lang know what the emperor thinks? Bai Shandao, he didn't kill the previous leader Zhang Teng immediately, but reported to the court that Zhang Teng had embezzled the tributes to our dynasty in the name of the lack of revenue from the Liazi department in the past few years, and embezzled the tributes to enjoy the extravagance. Then send all the things in Zhang Teng's warehouse to Dajin to make up for the tribute. Zhou Man raised his eyebrows. Bai Shan said with a smile, he is respectful to the king, and grandfather was the first leader of my dynasty, so he is considered orthodox, so His Majesty forgives his self-assertion. To put it bluntly, the emperor did not think that killing Zhang Teng and replacing it was a rebellion, but made his own claim, so he was not a rebellion. For this kind of vassal state and Jimmy state, all the court wants is an attitude. As long as they don't betray the Great Jin and respect the Great Jin enough, the Great Jin will not interfere in their internal government affairs, and whoever has the ability will be in power. Unless the Orthodox party asks the Jin for help. Since Zhang Teng did not ask the court for help, or did not have time, and the succeeding leader respected the Jin enough, the court would turn a blind eye and let it go. The guide looked at Bai Shan in surprise, how could this be true? Only then did Zhou Man remember to ask, what's the chief's name? Single name has a righteous character, and His Majesty bestows the country's surname on him. It's called Li Yi. Zhou Man clicked his tongue twice in his heart, it seems that the emperor really likes him, otherwise he wouldn't have given him a national name. Zhou Man muttered, why don't I know anything? Bai Shan smiled and said, the matter of the Liazi department started suddenly and ended quickly. You were not in Beijing at the time, so you didn't know it was normal. While talking, the group of people arrived at the gate of the chief's mansion. Bai Shan asked the guards to knock on the door, and he said to the guide, "No matter who asks, we are all scribes who come here to travel and do business." The lady is proficient in medical skills, and when she heard that the chief's wife was ill, she came here to offer a prescription, and she was just asking for some convenience in the chief's office in the future. "This is a reasonable thing," the guide hurriedly responded, but he was still a little nervous. "Is Mrs. Zhou really proficient in medical skills?" "She knows medical skills," they have a faint feeling. After all, she has dug and processed medicinal herbs along the way, but she is proficient in Bai Shandao. Anyway, she knows the principles of medicine, as long as she doesn't reveal her secrets. The wizard can only answer. The door opened, and two servants came out. The guide hurried forward to communicate. The servant stood on the steps, looked down at Zhou Man, frowned and asked, "Seeing that you are young and a woman, are you really proficient in medical skills?" Hearing what he said, Zhou Man became happy. "That's natural, don't you know, there are many women studying medicine in the Central Plains." The servant curled his lips and said, "Of course we know, but that's a student of the Imperial Medical Office, what has it to do with you?" He frowned at Zhou Man, not very happy to recommend him, so he said, "There are too many of you." Bai Shan immediately said, "They are just our friends, they are not at ease, so come over to have a look. In fact, it is only the two of us who want to see a doctor." The servant frowned a little. "You also know medicine?" Bai Shan glanced at Zhou Man and said with a smile, "We are from the same school, and I also know a little bit about medicine." This sentence is true before and after, but together it is half truth and half false. Zhou Man lowered his head slightly, not letting the servants see the smile on his face. Bai Erlang and the others felt that Bai Shan was too bad, deliberately misleading others. But here, Bai Shan is obviously easier to win people's trust than Zhou Man, and people believe in Bai Shan's medical skills, so the servant let the two of them in after weighing it up. Only let the two of them go in. There is only one update today, see you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3455. When Bai Erlang left, he couldn't help muttering, "This is too rude. After all, it's a doctor who came to see a doctor for his wife, and he was so rude." Mingda frowned and said, "Either the lady's status is low and the chief doesn't care about her, or she's seriously ill and chiefly doesn't care about housekeeping, and she's in a hurry to go to the doctor. There are too many people who recommend themselves. Yin he, it should be the latter, otherwise the shopkeeper wouldn't say that a large number of doctors have come to Annan City recently." Zhou Man and Bai Shan walk side by side with the servants. Annan is located in southern Xinjiang. Spring comes early and there are many plants. This is the time when 100 flowers bloom, so the mansion is full of flowers. There are many flowers, and butterflies circle around the flowers. If he hadn't come to see the patient, Zhou Man would definitely want to appreciate it. But even so, she didn't hold back from looking again and again. Just now, Keek rang 3 times, and there were 3 plants that she hadn't recorded before hidden under the colorful flowers. The buildings here are very different from those in the Central Plains. Each house is independent, and there is a large yard in front, surrounded by walls. Flowers and trees are planted in the yard, and climbing vines cover the walls. Some flowers it is in full bloom, and the entire courtyard wall is dotted with colorful flowers. Coupled with the bright sunshine, the whole mansion is full of spring. In such an environment, even if he came to see a doctor, Zhou Man couldn't help but relax a bit. When they entered a courtyard, they finally saw the servants except the servant who led the way. Their faces were serious, and they carried things in and out, hardly making a sound. The atmosphere in the courtyard was solemn, and the servants only looked up when they saw new people coming. Zhou Man and Bai Shan looked at each other, and followed the servant quietly into the house. "Boss, it's here." The middle-aged man sitting on the first seat on the left side of the main hall put down his teacup, raised his eyelids and looked at Zhou Man and Bai Shan. After turning his eyes around the two of them, he looked at Bai Shan, saw that his face was white and handsome, his figure was loose and his temperament was cool. His face looked better. He stood up and cupped his hands and asked, "Are you two former doctors from the middle school? I don't know who to learn from. What disease is good at?" Although they were asking the question, the words were directed at Bai Shan. Bai Shan couldn't help but glanced at Zhou Man, and then said with a smile, "I'm just proficient in medical theory, and it's my wife who is proficient in medical skills." The head manager looked at Zhou Man in surprise. Zhou Man smiled at him, and before he could speak, he saw the other party frown. "Don't you two think that it is our wife who is sick and think that we are in urgent need of a female doctor?" He said, "Our Liaison department is not like the Central Plains area. It doesn't pay much attention to the defense of men and women. Your method doesn't work here." "Zhou Man, could it be that a female doctor lied to you?" The general manager said, "The diseases they are good at are not suitable for our wife's disease. This doctor, please go." Because of Zhou Man, there are a lot of female doctors in Dajin now, and because of the convenience of their gender, many female doctors are more proficient in women's diseases. The chief manager said this, which means that Mrs. Li's illness is not a woman's disease. Zhou Man hurriedly said, "I'm actually better at internal medicine, and I also have research on some difficult and miscellaneous diseases." She said, "You have also seen that our husband and wife often walk outside, so we have seen many diseases, although we don't know yet Mrs. Li's illness, but maybe I have seen it before. Can I help you?" Seeing that the chief executive frowned, Zhou Man continued, "I'm from the Imperial Medical Office." The chief manager looked her up and down, frowned, "Are you a student of the Imperial Medical Office?" Zhou Man didn't object, and smiled at the chief manager. "Then why are you here?" "Zhou Man, I'm not young, I've already served as an official. The students of the Imperial Medical Administration must accept the appointment of the Imperial Medical Administration, and they must serve at least 10 years. After 10 years, it is up to them whether to continue to be an official doctor under the Imperial Medical Administration system, or to resign and practice medicine freely. In these years, not all the students are willing to work in the Imperial Medical Office and the Medical Office. Some of them leave after completing the 10-year agreement, or return to the family to inherit the family business, or start their own business. There are also some who would rather pay high liquidated damages and directly break away from the Imperial Medical Office. No matter which one it is, Zhou Man will bless them as a decree. Anyway, after they left, they would either continue to practice medicine in the world, or do medical-related work, all of which contributed to Dajin's medical career. Moreover, regardless of the former and the latter, the Thai medical department will not lose money. Zhou Man now portrays himself as the first type of student. A student who left the Imperial Medical Office after completing the 10-year period to travel and practice medicine. The chief manager finally stopped doubting, and after thinking for a while, he said, "You can go to see our wife, but I have something to say. After you read it, you can't leave the chief's mansion regardless of whether you can cure it or not. You can only leave after our wife is well." Zhou Man raised his eyebrows and turned to look at Bai Shan. Bai Shan was also surprised and frowned slightly. "Is this a contagious disease? Otherwise why so secret?" He also watched Zhou Man. Zhou Man felt itchy, and was really curious about what kind of disease it was, so he nodded immediately. Bai Shan had no choice but to talk to the chief executive. "Yes, but I have to tell my companions, and I have to ask them to send some daily necessities. Something here." The chief manager stopped and said with a smile, "Then write a letter now. Come here and bring up the pen and ink." It's because they didn't give any chance to reveal the chief's wife's illness. Bai Shan didn't mind either. He took the pen and thought about it, then wrote a letter to Yin or the three of them, nothing more than asking the three of them to wait in the inn. If they are not used to living in the inn, they can find a house here to rent. Well, the chief's wife's illness may not be cured, and they estimate that it will take a long time before they can go out. What Bai Shan didn't write down is that if the wife of the chief's illness can't be cured, it will take a long time from the illness to the funeral and the dust settles, so they have to wait for a long time, so it's better to let them live get comfortable. He told Bai Erlang emphatically, let him take good care of his wife, listen to Yin He's words, don't cause trouble, and if there is a conflict with the locals, then send someone to the chief's mansion to find them. Anyway, they are treating the chief's wife, so there will be some preferential treatment. He only mentioned at the end of the letter that Zibing should be packed and delivered to them. Bai Shan dried the ink and handed it to the head manager without folding it. The head manager didn't take it, but handed over an envelope and said with a smile, you two haven't seen our wife yet, so there will be no problem with this letter. Bai Shan smiled, folded the letter and put it in an envelope, but didn't seal it, and handed it to him instead, saying, I'm here to serve as chief supervisor. The chief manager stepped aside, stretched out his hand and said, you two, please follow me. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3456. The head manager took them out directly, instead of going out of the yard, but through a small door on the side, and walked through a long corridor to another building. There are guards inside and outside the small gate, and there are 10 steps on both sides of the corridor. There is a door at the end of the corridor, which is also guarded by descendants. After entering, Zhou Man was caught by the large camellias in the yard. The people who were standing in the yard talking turned around, and one of them frowned when he saw Zhou Man and Bai Shan. Is that you? Zhou Man heard the sound and looked around, only to realize that it was the stall owner whom he met yesterday, and the shopkeeper said his name was Wu Jin. Zhou Man smiled at him, nodded and said, I didn't expect that we and the stall owner are destined to meet again. The head manager glanced back and forth between them, you two know each other. Zhou Man smiled and nodded, yesterday we bought this gentleman's herbs at the market. Wu Jin nodded slightly to the chief executive. Then the chief manager introduced to the people standing in the yard, these two are doctors from the Central Plains, from the Imperial Medical Office. I hope you can work together to cure our wife. The Imperial Medical Office, someone sneered and said, 9 out of 10 doctors in this world say they came from the Imperial Medical Office, and the remaining one dared to claim to be a direct disciple of Zhou Shuling, but who knows if it is true or not. Zhou Man was surprised, does our medical department have such a high reputation outside? Wu Jin and others, shameless. The head manager didn't care if she was real or not, as long as she could save Madam, so he urged, Dr. Zhou, go and see Madam first, and see if you have seen such a disease. Zhou Man's eyes brightened slightly, she had long wanted to go in and take a look. Bai Shan silently followed, and before entering the room, a maid brought up masks on a tray, and seeing the chief manager frowning, she timidly said, it was Zhang Wu's request, saying that everyone entering the room should wear a mask lest. She was also wearing a mask at this time, looked up at Zhou Man and Bai Shan cautiously and timidly, and said, to avoid infection. The big manager picked up the mask and put it on with a sullen face. Zhou Man and Bai Shan naturally wouldn't object, they picked up a mask and put it on very obediently. Not only that, they also put their hands in their sleeves, trying not to contact the outside world, and they didn't know what disease this lady had. Entering the room, they smelled a strong smell of Chinese medicine. The house is open, with layers of veils hanging down, and there are quite a few maidservants in the room. They all stand with their heads bowed, and Zhou Man's eyes glide over them. Although they are all wearing masks, she always feels that their faces are full of fear and despair. Bai Shan, who has always been keen, also noticed it, his brows were slightly frowned, and at the same time, like Joe Man, he also became curious. Mrs. Lee was lying on the bed, the gauze curtain was put down, Joe Man couldn't see the person lying on the bed clearly, so he glanced at the chief manager, and when he saw that he didn't object, he walked over to him. The maid guarding the bed numbly stretched out her hand to lift the curtain, without even looking at Joe Man, so Joe Man raised her head and glanced at her. Lying on the bed was a beautifully colored woman, but her face was pale and her lips were slightly cyanotic. Joe Man stared at her cyan lips, stretched out his hand to grab her hand out from under the quilt for a while, but didn't feel the pulse immediately, but checked the color of the nails first. Bai Shan, who is proficient in medical science, looked over from behind her and saw that her lips and nails were blue, which was darker than blue, so he was a little stunned. Is this poisoning? Joe Man felt the person lying down trembling slightly, and could hear her teeth chattering when she listened carefully, and then touched the quilt on her body. There were 3 layers. In the sunny spring of southern Xinjiang, a quilt of this thickness is also rare. She turned around and reached out to the servant girl for a pulse pillow, and while putting her hand on the pulse pillow to take the pulse, she said to Bai Shan, "It's not poisoning, it's more like." She listened to the pulse with a sinking heart, frowned and said, "It's like malaria." She looked up again at the color of her face and lips, her heart sank. "It's malaria." This is an affirmative sentence. Bai Shan turned his head to look at the chief manager. The chief executive said pleasantly, "It's malaria. Dr. Joe is the one who diagnosed malaria the fastest. I wonder if there is a cure for it?" Joe Man continued to feel the pulse, and asked, "When did she start? How is the situation from the beginning of the onset to the present? What medicines have you used?" Chief Conduit, "It started 10 days ago. Madam felt unwell at first and felt a little bit cold, but she asked the witch doctor to prescribe the medicine, which was not good. After 2 days, she had a fever again. The witch doctor changed the prescription. After taking it for 2 days, Madam, I feel much better, but I still have a fever from time to time, but it's not so hot. We all think it's getting better, but after 2 days, Madam feels cold again, shivering all over. Madam's health is getting worse and worse, so the chief invited Zhang Wu to see it, and Zhang Wu diagnosed it as malaria." Joe Man glanced at the servant girl serving in the room, and asked, "How many people got sick during this period?" Seeing the chief executive frowning, she said, "Knowing the number of infected people can judge the infectivity of this malaria." Then the chief manager said, "As of today, there are a total of 18 people who have been diagnosed with malaria by Zhang Wu." Joe Man confirmed, "Including your wife?" "Of course it doesn't include it," the chief executive said. "Isn't Dr. Joe asking about the servants?" Joe Man skipped the question and continued to ask, "Are there any deaths?" 5 have died. That's why the chief's mansion is so anxious to invite witch doctors from all tribes to treat him." Joe Man nodded to show he understood, and asked, "What prescription did she use before?" The head manager turned around and rummaged on the desk beside him, and brought a stack of prescriptions over after a while. Joe Man took it and looked at it carefully, and paused when he found a few prescriptions. The chief manager saw it sharply, and said, "This is the prescription prescribed by Wu Zhang." The head manager's eyes brightened. "Speaking of which, Zhang Wu also came from the Imperial Medical Department. Seeing that the 2 of you are about the same age, maybe you both studied under the same person." Only then did Joe Man ask, "Is Wu Zhang called Zhang Yin?" "Yes." The chief executive looked at her in surprise. He was just testing. Did she really know her? Dr. Joe really know Zhang Wu? Joe Mandeo, I only know that he was called a Yin when he was studying, and a Lu who studied with him in the Imperial Medical Office called him Wu Yin. I heard that he returned to southern Xinjiang after he finished his studies. The chief at that time gave the same surname. The chief at that time was surnamed Zhang, and he had an enmity with the current chief Li. There are many people in southern Xinjiang who do not have surnames. Among them, apart from the chiefs and elders in the tribe, shamans are the most respected. In some tribes, the status of the witch is even higher than that of the leader, and in more tribes, the witch and the leader are on an equal footing. However, most Wus do not have a surname. They take Wu as their surname and add their own name after it. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3457. In the big tribes of the Liazi tribe, because they valued force more, the status of witches was not very high. Under the leader, they could barely sit on an equal footing with the elders in the tribe. Wu Yin is one of Zhou Man's students, and like other barbarian students, he will return to his country or tribe after completing his studies. Because it involves diplomacy, Zhou Man also pays attention to the whereabouts of these students. Wu Yin is considered to have a better future. I heard that he was selected as the next Wu Yin's successor within a few years after returning to the Liazi department. However, that was when the father of the previous leader was in power. He became a witch of the big tribe when Zhang Ten was the leader. Now, Zhou Man looked around and asked, I don't know where he is now. I want to talk to him about Madam's treatment plan. There is no sense of panic that the identity may be revealed. Bai Shan glanced at her with a smile, and then looked at the chief manager. The head manager was silent for a while and then said, Dr. Zhou, wait a moment, I will invite him right away. As soon as the chief manager left, Zhou Man turned back to look at the patient lying on the bed, and after pondering for a moment, he said to Bai Shan, Go out, dress more tightly these days, and put on the insect repellent medicine bag I gave you, don't call yourself a mosquito bite. Bai Shan responded, glanced at the person on the bed and whispered, Be careful too. When Bai Shan went out, Zhou Man pondered, what matters for this disease is not only the patient itself, but also its own contagiousness. Moreover, this disease is not transmitted from person to person, and wearing a mask is basically useless, what matters is mosquitoes. Zhou Man's eyes swept across the room, and his heart beat violently. Mosquitoes have legs and wings, and they can give birth to offspring, and offspring to grandchildren. How can people guard against it? Did the Emirates think that by confining people in this backyard and preventing patients from being exposed to the outside world, malaria can be prevented? So, in 10 days, how many patients have been infected in the corner outside where they can't see? Did they know they had malaria and not typhoid? Zhou Man has a headache. Footsteps sounded, and Zhou Man turned his head when he heard the sound, and met Zhang Yin who walked in. The sullen Zhang Yin couldn't help but stop when he saw Zhou Man, and looked at him in shock. The head manager has been paying attention to the expressions of both parties, and has confirmed Zhou Man's identity upon seeing this. It seems that Mrs. Zhou is not lying, she is really a student of the Imperial Medical Office, and she may be a classmate of Zhang Wu. He immediately smiled and warmly introduced to both parties, Zhang Wu, this is the doctor I was talking about from the Central Plains. She is from the Imperial Medical Office just like you. Maybe you two are classmates. Zhang Wu looked at Zhou Man. Zhou Man smiled and nodded at him, Wu Yin, I haven't seen you for many years. Zhang Wu hesitated for a moment, seeing that she didn't correct the mistakes in the chief manager's words, and it seemed that she didn't seem to want to show her identity, so she didn't point it out, but cupped her hands deeply, Miss Zhou. Come on, let's discuss her illness. Zhou Man walked to the table and put the prescription they had prescribed on the table. I've seen the prescription you used, and it doesn't seem to work very well. Yes, Zhang Wu said cautiously, I also used acupuncture, but it was barely able to control the condition from getting worse, it couldn't be cured, or even relieved. Zhou Man sighed, and took out a blank piece of paper, changed the prescription, and changed the needle prescription. The two were discussing on the sidelines, and the chief executive stood aside and listened. Although he couldn't understand the medical principles they discussed, he had a good memory and could memorize them by rote. Joe Man wrote out a new prescription and acupuncture, and handed the prescription to the general manager. "Go get the medicine and boil it, I will give her the needle." She paused, then turned to ask Zhang Wu, "Do you want to stay as my assistant?" Zhang Wu glanced at the acupuncture points above, bowed and said, "Yes, I'll help you." The chief manager took a look at Zhang Wu when he heard the words. Zhang Wu is the great witch of the big tribe. Although his relationship with the chief was very ordinary in the past 2 years, he was also highly respected. How could he be so polite to Mrs. Joe? Even classmates, they are too respectful. Seeing that Zhang Wu took out the needle bag, the chief manager lowered his eyes and bowed, and stepped back, letting the maids in the room wait for them to do the needles. Joe Man took the needle bag handed over by Zhang Wu, and sighed that the defense of men and women in southern Xinjiang is lower than that in the Central Plains. Now in the Central Plains, male doctors can also give needles to women, but most of them focus on the brothers and feet. The exposed parts of the head, such as the shoulders and neck, will still be inconvenient. I didn't expect this side to be ignored. Joe Man sat back in front of the bed, asked the maid to help remove the coat from Mrs. Li, and then began to perform needles. While doing the needle, she explained the reason for doing it this way, while Zhang Wu handed her the needle and listened very carefully. When Joe Man opened his mouth, he knew that the teacher asked him to stay and study, otherwise, she had done such difficult acupuncture techniques in the palace, and she didn't need an assistant, so why did she need it here? Zhang Wu watched carefully, and wrote down the steps and techniques of her acupuncture. After Joe Man finished the injection, he waited for it to take effect, then turned to Zhang Wu and asked, "How many people are infected in the mansion?" She had asked the chief manager this question before, but she wanted to hear it from Zhang Wu again. Zhang Wu pondered, "There are 18 found, but I think there are more than these." He took a careful look at Joe Man, and said in a low voice, "Moreover, it's not just the servant girl serving in the madam's room who got sick, the servants serving in other places are also sick." Joe Man frowned, "Don't you know that malaria is transmitted by mosquitoes?" Zhang Wu was taken aback, "I thought malaria was caused by feeling malaria, and it was caused by miasma. Madam was the first case. The person who took care of her was infected with malaria." Zhang Wu paused and stopped talking. Joe Man frowned and thought for a while before saying, "That's true. Although it's not transmitted through oral saliva, mosquito bites are indeed malaria." She said, "Let's find a way to eliminate mosquitoes first and reduce the infection rate." Zhang Wu was relieved not to be scolded. Attention should also be paid to protection, not limited to the chief's mansion. Joe Man asked, "What about the chief?" "These things need to be done by people, and people need to be sent out to check the infected people. This is a public health event, not just a noble person getting sick." Zhang Wu trembled all over, then remembered, and got up quickly, "I'm going to see the chief right away." He turned around and took 2 steps. When he remembered something, he turned around and asked Joe Man, "Mrs. Joe, do you want to go together?" Joe Man shook his head after thinking for a while, "I'm looking at Mrs. Chief, you go first." She didn't know Chief Li, and she wasn't even a member of the Liaison department. If she rashly made suggestions, it might backfire, so let Wu Yin go. Joe Man didn't think this would be a surprise. After all, malaria was a highly contagious epidemic. No leader would just sit back and watch it expand. Measures must be taken to prevent it. It all depends on the method used. While waiting for the acupuncture point to arrive, Joe Man leaned over his desk and wrote many prevention methods and prescriptions on the table. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3458. But she didn't expect Wu Yin to come back soon. With a serious face, facing Joe Man's gaze, he lowered his head guiltily, hesitated for a while and said, "The chief is not in the mansion." Zhou Man put down his pen and frowned, "Aren't you here?" Wu Yin didn't speak. Zhou Man understood that this was missing. Zhou Man thought for a while and asked, "Can the chief executive see the chief?" Wu Yin nodded. "Zhou Man, look for him." Wu Yin said, "I've already looked for him, but he doesn't believe that the malaria has spread outside. Ever since Madame fell ill, the servants serving her have never been out. You can't go out the door. He locked up people, but can he also lock up mosquitoes?" Wu Yin said helplessly, "He doesn't believe that the disease is transmitted by mosquitoes. There are not many other things in southern Xinjiang, and there are the most mosquitoes. Who doesn't get bitten by mosquitoes a few times a year? No one gets malaria. Zhou Man, you are a great witch." Wu Yin lowered her eyes and thought for a while, took a step forward, picked up a pen on the table and wrote on a piece of paper, "The chief may also be infected. Treat it if you are infected." Zhou Man blinked her eyes, and realized belatedly, she raised her eyes to look at Wu Yin, and stood up after a while, "The needle can be pulled out, go and pull out the needle, remember the sequence." Wu Yin froze for a moment and then nodded, "Yes, I remember." He turned around to pull out the needle, Zhou Man followed behind and watched. After he pulled out the needle, Zhou Man confirmed that the patient's condition was still stable, so he said to Wu Yin, "Take me to see the room where I live." Wu Yin hurriedly responded and took Zhou Man out in person. A maidservant wanted to follow immediately, but Wu Yin stopped her, "I'll just come here, you go down. After all, he is a great witch, even if he can't see the chief, he is still highly respected," so the maid stopped obediently. Then Wu Yin saw Bai Shan sitting in the corner of the yard basking in the sun. Wu Yin stopped and looked at him speechless for a while, because there was no one around. He subconsciously saluted, "Master." Bai Shan glanced at Zhou Man first, saw her standing beside her pretty, then nodded and said with a smile, "It's Wu Yin, I heard Ziqian mentioned you." Hearing this, Wu Yin looked at Zhou Man excitedly. He didn't expect that the husband not only remembered him, but also mentioned him to Bai Xiang. "It's not safe here, after all, it's still in Madame's yard, and there are servants walking by from time to time not far away." So Zhou Man asked, "Where do we live?" Wu Yin quickly calmed down and took them to the room next door where he lived. "Sir, Shigong, you can stay in this room, and I will live next door. If you have anything to do, you can tell me." Zhou Man and Bai Shan went in, scanned the room and found everything they needed, and they didn't close the door, they just sat at the table and talked with Wu Yin, but intentionally turned their backs to the door. Zhou Man got straight to the point, wouldn't someone from the Liazi department plan to rebel again? Otherwise, why should the chief avoid it? Wu Yin said helplessly, "Sir, I don't know." He paused and said, "However, it is normal for the chief to have such doubts. The branch where Chief Li belonged to was originally the chief and the first big leader named by the court, but when he was his father, because his parents and mother some grievances of the tribe, the Zhang family seized the power of the leader of the tribe, and drove them out." "Wait a minute, Chief Zhang is. It's Chief Li's cousin, and Chief Zhang is Chief Li's uncle. Such power changes are common in the Liazi department. The tribe's elected chieftains. However, the chief can't kill all the clansmen who opposed him in the past. In addition to the big tribe, there are two other tribes with a lot of warriors and a lot of wealth. They also want to be chiefs," Wu Yin said. "No one knows, does anyone among them want to rebel?" Bai Shan was surprised, "You are a great witch, yet you have no news at all." Wu Yin said frankly, "I am only good at medical skills. In the big tribe, I can only treat people. The effect of sacrifices and blessings is not very good. In the past 2 years, when encountering sacrifices and blessings, the chiefs have always invited Wu Jin." He sighed, and now that we've covered this point, he simply explained the grievances clearly. Anyway, this matter is not a secret in the Liazi department. With the ability of Mr. and Shigong, I don't know it now, but I will know it in a few days. The shaman must choose someone who is smart and clear-minded, and he must have a good family background. My family was also one of the largest families in the tribe back then. Joe Man did a good job of listening carefully. The person chosen to be the witch's disciple is my elder brother. Bai Shan remembered something, and asked uncertainly, Wu Jin. After a pause, Wu Yin asked, how does master know? Bai Shan paused and said, probably because your names made me pay more attention. After all, it was exactly the same name as his father-in-law and younger father-in-law, except for the surname, of course. Wu Yin didn't know this, and continued, but my father died in a battle, and my mother remarried, so I can only live with my elder brother. He said, my elder brother is the most favored disciple of the great witch. He lived with the witch. I also learned some skills of the witch. When the tribe rebelled, the great witch took the side of the old chief Zhang. My brother thought it was immoral. Yes, in a fit of anger, he ran away with some clansmen and formed another clan. Wu Yin said, I was left in the big tribe. Later, the tribe wanted to pay tribute to the heavenly court, so I was selected to go north with the mission. I didn't expect that my husband would be kind enough to choose people from our Liazi tribe to stay and study medicine. I was given the surname Wu because I followed the great witch for several years. Left behind. Joe Man listened with gusto. What happened next? Mr. and Shigong should know what happened later. I came back from my studies, because my medical skills are better, and I gradually got reused. Old Chief Zhang was ill at that time, and I saved him. Wu Yin said, he has always been worried about the fact that the Great Witch supported him in his conspiracy back then. He felt that it was not good for the Great Witch to have too much power and prestige. In addition, at that time, the Celestial Dynasty marched east because of the disrespect of the vassal states. The Celestial Dynasty showed its loyalty, so it chose me who had studied in the capital to be the Great Witch. Wu Yin was very self-aware and said, I'm good at medicine, but I haven't received the true teachings of sacrifices and blessings. So after taking over, Chief Li has always wanted to bring back the small tribe where my brother belongs, and ask him to be a great witch. However, there are quite a few tribal leaders who have the same plan as Chief Li. I don't know how many of them are sincere, and how many of them want to get the true great witch, and then rule the entire Liazi tribe. That is to say, Chief Li can't completely control the Liazi department, otherwise why would he want to use Wu Jin's power? If you really have complete control, you should try to weaken the power and prestige of the Great Witch just like Chief Zhang. Wu Yin remained silent. After listening to the story, Joe Man brought the topic back. If malaria cannot be effectively controlled, even if they win the position of chief, they will take over a tribe that has suffered a lot. What's the point? What Bai Shan thought was, in this way, the current Liazi department is very dangerous. Conflicts and bloodshed may occur at any time. Joe Man and Mingda may be shocked if they stay here, their identities are leaked, and they may become targets. Bai Shan frowned and asked, is Chief Li in the mansion now? I want to see him. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3459. In Wu Yin's life, there were many people around him, but the one who had a profound influence on him, apart from his elder brother and the Great Witch, was Joe Man. When he was ignorant of his age, it was his elder brother who raised him, but his elder brother and Da Wu were two different people. He once doubted his own understanding until he went to Chang'an and entered the Imperial Medical Office to study. He happened to be mature at the age when he was only able to think, she must not know that what these students learned from her was not just medical skills. Tenacity, optimism, and tolerance are the most valuable qualities Wu Yin has seen in her. Standing in the court hall as a woman, she is not without pressure, and even in the Imperial Medical Office she founded, there are people who disagree with her. The sound of It's not that she didn't hear it, but she was tenacious and optimistic, and even tolerated these doubts and contempt, so Wu Yin really regarded her as a teacher. Naturally, Bai Shan was also recognized as his teacher from the bottom of his heart. Master has a request, even though their standpoints may be somewhat different, but he still ignores that difference and decides to fulfill his wish. I will do my best. Wu Yin got up after saying that, turned around and went out to find a way to meet the chief. Zhou Man waited for him to leave and asked Bai Shan, "Are you going to reveal your identity to Chief Li? If there is going to be chaos in southern Xinjiang, instead of letting it go and not knowing where the danger is coming from, then it is better for us to choose," Bai Shan said, "and you also said that the epidemic has already spread, and if there is another war at this time, I am afraid that the entire bureaucracy will be destroyed. The ministry will fall into chaos. The people of the Liazi department are also the people of the Great Jin." In the yard some distance away from here, the chief executive was reporting to Chief Li, "The attitude is not like treating a classmate, but like treating an elder." "Elders," Chief Li, who was leaning on the bed with a white face, asked, "Are they very old?" "No, she looks younger than Zhang Wu, and..." The head manager paused and said, "When I first met him, he looked approachable, but occasionally he looks more imposing than everyone I've ever met." The chief steward didn't say so, but Chief Li was among all the people he'd met. The maid heard correctly. Did she really vaguely hear Zhang Wu calling that female doctor? It doesn't sound right. Chief Li clenched his fingers, and leaned over to stare at the chief executive. "Do you think it's the orders human from the former Imperial Medical Office?" The chief executive was stunned. "Chief." A light flashed in Chief Li's eyes, and he clenched his fists to feel the strength in his body, but no, he knew that it was difficult for him to stand still now, let alone his previous strength. If it was her, maybe she could save us. Chief Li swayed from side to side like a tug of war in his heart, and finally said, "Go invite them, I want to see them in person." "Chief," the chief executive couldn't help but said, "if people outside know that you are also infected with malaria." "We don't have time to wait," Chief Li said, "I'm dead. Before they come to kill me, I will die of malaria first. Then they can take down the chief's mansion without a single soldier. Only by being alive can we regain what we have lost. If we guess wrong, isn't it Zhou Shuling?" Chief Li lowered his eyes and said, "I guessed wrong, isn't there Zhang Wu?" "Chief Manager, didn't you distrust him, and invited Wu Jin back?" "Wu Jin has a complete Dao heritage, so there is no problem with offering sacrifices and praying for blessings, but in terms of medical skills, Zhang Wu is better." Chief Li paused and said, "Send someone to watch him, I don't believe he is not afraid of death." He said, "He is the person with the best medical skills in our Liazi department, and he should be used when he can." The chief manager could only agree, and was about to step back when Chief Li suddenly called him back, who was the Wu who stayed with Zhang Wu back then to study medicine in Chang'an. The chief executive said without even thinking about it, "Wu Lu." Chief Li asked, "Have you invited him? Where is he now?" "Chief manager, please, but he never came." Chief Li was a little disappointed. If someone came, he would not be able to cure him, at least he could help him identify the identity of Ba Niangzhou. Chief Li sighed and waved, "Go get someone." Wu Yin was still trying to figure out a way to meet Chief Li, but who knew that the chief executive brought someone over to ask Zhou Man and Bai Shan to meet Chief Li. Wu Yin was stunned for a moment, and hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "I don't know what the chief wants from them. Worrying about Chief Li is bad for them." Bai Shan glanced at Wu Yin, signaling him not to worry, and Wu Yin took a step back. The chief manager watched and respected Bai Shan more and more, and smiled kindly. "Our chief knows that the two are distinguished guests from the Central Plains. We are very grateful that you are willing to come to treat your wife, so I want to thank you both personally." He glanced at Wu Yin, and said with a smile, "Zhang Wu, let's go together, the chief also wants to discuss Madam's condition with you." Wu Yin looked at Zhou Man. Zhou Man nodded slightly. Wu Yin nodded with the chief executive, and said proudly, "Let's go." The chief manager was not angry, but happy instead. Zhang Wu's attitude happened to show that Zhou Man and Bai Shan had high identities. Zhou Man and Bai Shan followed the chief manager through the two buildings and arrived at a remote yard on the mountainside. Bai Shan turned around and looked down. Here, she could basically see the whole mansion in her eyes. She raised her eyebrows, but she didn't notice it before. From this point of view, when they were standing in the yard talking with Wu Yin, they were standing here, you can see them. Zhou Man shrugged his nose, and smelled the familiar smell of medicine, which was the same as the smell of medicine in Mrs. Li's room. She suddenly had a guess in her heart, and she couldn't help but think. The disease has its own priorities, and she may not be able to save everyone. If Chief Li dies of malaria, southern Xinjiang will be in chaos. Zhou Man couldn't help looking at Bai Shan, and Bai Shan was also turning to look at her. Seeing her look, he smiled at her, reached out to hold her hand, and led her into the house. Chief Li had already changed his clothes and sat in the study room. There was a desk in front of him. The windows were closed and the light was a bit dim, but Zhou Man could still see that he lacked breath. Sick. Chief Li's eyes fixed on the hands held together by the two, and slowly moved up to the faces of Bai Shan and Zhou Man. Although he had never seen those two people before, the moment he saw them, he knew that this was they are gone. Chief Li smiled, "Master Bai, order from Zhou." Zhou Man didn't speak. Bai Shan said, "Our husband and wife have already retired, Chief Li can call us by the name, I'm Zishan, this is my wife Zhou Ziqian." He looked Chief Li up and down. Although the light was dim, he still noticed that the other party's complexion was not very good, and he had already guessed in his heart, so he said, "Chief Li seems to be unwell." "It's a joke for the distinguished guests," Chief Li said to the general manager, "Open the window." Originally, he was just not sure of their identities, and was worried that news of his illness would spread, so he met them in such a dark room. As soon as the window was opened and the light came in, everyone saw that Chief Li's forehead was covered with sweat and his face was pale. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3460. The conjecture was confirmed, and Zhou Man sighed. Chief Li also contracted malaria. Yes, Chief Li said, since he had confirmed the identity of the visitor and expected her to save his life, he would not hide it, and said, "It's been 3 days." He propped up the table and got up, walked in front of the two of them, and gave Zhou Man a deep bow, "Please help Master Zhou." He is still a respectful title, and he doesn't call them words like Bai Shan said. Seeing that he was almost unsteady on his feet, Zhou Man saw that his symptoms were no less severe than Mrs. Li's, so he hurriedly asked someone to help him to lie on the bed before giving him a pulse check. Chief Li was infected after Mrs. Li, and he felt chills and had a premonition that he had malaria, so he began to block the news. The medicine he took these 2 days was according to the medicine prescribed by Zhang Wu to his wife, which was indeed better than the medicine prescribed by the government doctor, but he still felt that death was approaching little by little after a long illness. Zhou Man gave him an injection, glanced at Bai Shan, got up and went out to discuss medicine with Wu Yin, without interrupting their conversation. Wu Yin sat in the outer room and waited. Seeing Zhou Man coming out, she hurriedly stood up and saluted, "Sir." Since the two of them had already identified themselves with Chief Li, there was no need for him to hide them. Zhou Man nodded slightly at him and asked, "Are there any grasshoppers collected around the Dragon Boat Festival in the mansion?" Wu Yin froze for a moment and then nodded, "Yes." "Try it." Wu Yin went to pick up a pen to write the prescription. "Apart from this, what other medicine do you need?" Zhou Man was also not polite. He mentioned several medicine names in a row, and Wu Yin wrote them down and handed them to the chief manager. Bai Shan communicated with Chief Li in the inner room, and Zhou Man simply went to sit on the railing outside the courtyard. This courtyard is halfway up the mountain. There are many flowers and trees planted in the center, but as long as you look up and look far away, you can see the entire Emirates mansion, and even several streets outside the mansion. Living here, there are mountains behind the house, and the view in front of the house is so wide. If someone wants to rebel, it will be difficult to attack quietly, right? Wu Yin sat beside her, so every time Nanjiang changes hands, there will be bloodshed, and the people in this mansion will change one after another. Zhou Man sighed, Chief Li doesn't seem to trust you very much. Wu Yin naturally knew, he believed in my elder brother more. When the Zhang family rebelled, my elder brother supported the Li family, so he did not hesitate to leave the big tribe. I stayed with the big witch, and the big witch helped the Zhang family. So Wu Yin must be Chief Li's enemy in a certain sense, even if not, their relationship would be difficult to be as close as brotherly. You don't seem to want to change. I tried my best, Wu Yin smiled wryly. When he wanted to welcome my brother back, I revealed that I was only interested in medical skills, and I only wanted to save lives in the Liazi department. The position of the big witch can be given to my brother, but the chief I don't believe it, not even my elder brother, and no one in the entire bureau believes that I am sincere. Everyone thought he was playing hard to get. Only then did he realize Zhou Man's difficulty more and more. When she practiced medicine as a woman, was she also misunderstood and mistrusted? In the inner room, Bai Shan was also asking Chief Li a similar question. Chief Li doesn't trust Wu Yin, but why does he trust us? Chief Li said frankly, Zhang Wu is Zhang Wu, and the two adults are two adults. I can clearly distinguish them. Bai Shan smiled slightly and said, he is a student of my wife. Chief Li, I know, but I also know that Master Bai and Master Zhou will not want to see chaos in southern Xinjiang. The status of Zhang Wu as a disciple is not enough for the two adults to take such risks. Southern Xinjiang is the southern border of the Great Jin dynasty. Chaos is not good for the Great Jin dynasty. The chaos may even affect Lingnan, Jiangnan, and Huainan areas. Considering the positions of Bai Shan and Zhou Man, as long as the two of them are not thinking about rebellion, let the world be in chaos, then you don't want southern Xinjiang to fall into war. His status is the best way to maintain his rule. So he didn't worry that they would stand against him because of Zhang Wu's relationship. Bai Shan, it's good that Chief Li thinks clearly, but I also want to say, Wu Yin, no, he now has his own surname, Zhang Wu, he is your great witch, and he has no objection to your rule of southern Xinjiang. Thoughts, Chief Li thinks too much. Naturally, Chief Li would not believe Zhang Wu just because of Bai Shan's words, but at this time he had something to ask Bai Shan and Zhou Man, so he was happy to sell him a face. Don't worry, Lord Bai, Zhang Wu is the great witch of my tribe. Always trust him as long as he doesn't betray him. Bai Shan glanced at his face, nodded slightly and left. Bai Shan sent a letter to Yin Or, and then asked the people from the chieftain's mansion to go to the inn to pick them up. There are a lot of things to do next, and he alone is not enough. They count as one, they were all captured by him as young men. The chief's mansion, which had been silent for a long time, also slowly moved. Bai Shan lived in Chief Li's yard, and issued orders one after another. Several streets near the chief's mansion were under martial law, and it was strictly forbidden for unrelated people to approach. Trustworthy tribal warriors were selected to guard the chief's mansion. Then the leaders of the various tribes were called into Annan city, whether they came or not, anyway, the order was issued. At the same time, all the bureaucrats, yeomen, and soldiers in Annan city mobilized, and began to count the people who died of cold and fever in the past 10 days, as well as the people who now have symptoms of cold and fever. The three were in charge of counting a street, and the number of people and the list were sent to the chief's mansion one after another. Bai Shan's face sank little by little when he saw the above data. He read it and handed it to Chief Li. Chief Li was startled when he saw the number of people above. Why are there so many? This is just the statistics of the 3 streets near the chief's mansion. There will only be more in the entire Annan city. Bai Shan glanced at Chief Li, and anger rose from the bottom of his heart. In his opinion, Chief Li is incompetent. If it wasn't for southern Xinjiang, if it wasn't for the autonomy of the Liao people, he must have written to the court to abolish him. There was a highly contagious disease like malaria in his mansion, and he was able to quietly close the mansion for treatment, without considering that it might have been infected outside. He is not an ordinary person, he is a chief, the great leader of southern Xinjiang. Bai Shan was dissatisfied in his heart, but his complexion did not change. He said quietly, after counting the number of people, it is best to manage and treat these patients who have contracted the disease in a unified way. Chief Li was worried. I'm afraid there are not enough medicinal materials in the city. Is there still time to buy from the Central Plains? He felt a little uneasy, and after taking a look at Bai Shan, he thought about it. If this matter gets out, I'm afraid people's hearts will be shaken, and if someone has a heart to instigate it, I'm afraid the disease has not been brought under control, and the chaos will start first. Bai Shan lowered his face. There are more and more people who are sick and more people are dying. Even if the chief's mansion doesn't announce it, the people will notice it. By then, the people's trust in the chief's mansion will drop to the lowest point. It is better to take the initiative to fight the epidemic and provide disaster relief before they find out, so as to maintain the hearts of the people. But there is a shortage of supplies in the city. Bai Shan took a deep breath, suppressed the anger in his chest, got up and said, I'll find a solution for supplies. Chief Li, you are sick now, you should rest mainly. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 3461. Chief Li said with a moved face, thank you for your help. If it wasn't for your lord this time, I'm afraid Li won't be able to control it. Your lord is indeed the pillar of my great Jin. When Bai Shan walked out of the inner room, Zhou Man turned to look at him, and then paused for a moment with a smile on her face. She stood up and held him back. What's wrong? Bai Shan said with a normal expression, it's okay. How are Mrs. Li and Chief Li's condition? Zhou Man, it has been controlled, but malaria is changeable, so it may not change. She wasn't quite sure. Bai Shan, where are the other infected people in the mansion? After Zhou Man and Bai Shan revealed their identities, Zhou Man took over all the patients in the mansion. The servants who had been locked up in the side courtyard to fend for themselves were released and settled properly. Zhou Man had his place fumigated to kill the mosquitoes hiding inside as much as possible. Then the patients were divided into priorities and treated separately, and the medicinal materials in the mansion were consumed like running water every day. But the result was not very good. She waited here, just wanted to ask if there were any other sources of medicinal materials in the chief's mansion, and she wanted to change the medicine. And the infected patients in the city will also be treated. I plan to go out in the afternoon to check the situation. Where do you plan to locate the medical shed? Bai Shandao, it's just a few streets away from the chief's mansion. He said, the matter of malaria cannot be concealed, and the hearts of some bureaucrats are fluctuating, so I plan to use malaria as the first line of defense. Zhou Man opened his mouth wide. Are you going to use malaria to scare away those who want to rebel? The medical shed is set up outside the chief's mansion. I don't know how many lunatics dare to rush in. Even Wu Yan thinks that malaria is transmitted from person to person, and other people will believe it even more. Under such circumstances, they will only avoid malaria. How dare they rush in? Unless it is really desperate. Then what if? Don't worry, I have other arrangements, Bai Shan said, I'll arrange things here. you just study the prescriptions for curing diseases. He paused, and said apologetically, there are also medicinal materials. Annan City is far away from the Central Plains, and there are thousands of mountains and rivers away from the previous city, so I'm afraid I won't be able to gather the medicinal materials you need for a while. He said, the people in this mansion are still second to none. There are a lot of infected people outside. Once the statistics are counted, this matter will be completely hidden. If we can't get the medicine, I'm afraid the rebel army has not attacked the chief's mansion. The people will be in chaos first. Joe Man, the pharmacy in the city. I have already had people recruited. In addition to medicine shops, there are also witches from various tribes. I have recruited all the medicinal materials and doctors that can be recruited. Time for these people to weigh the pros and cons. They are in the city, so they are in the game. But it will take time. I've asked the chief manager, I'm afraid they don't have much medicine in their hands. Joe Man pondered for a while, and said after a while, actually, there is another prescription that you can try. What recipe? King Hao, Joe Man said, there is a prescription for rescuing the soldiers behind the elbow, which uses fresh King Hao, squeezes the juice and takes it. I haven't tried this prescription much, but King Hao can be seen everywhere, and there are more in southern Xinjiang. Even ordinary people can pick it up and use it. Bai Shan was surprised. I remember malaria occurred in Jiangnan area 6 years ago, and you were the one who treated it together at that time. What prescription did you prescribe? Several sheets. For mild cases, make pills with changshan, anamarina, licorice, and ephedra, etc. Generally, 3 pills will be enough, Joe Man said. At that time, the epidemic was discovered quickly, and the medical department immediately made arrangements. They also made preventive pills with garlic and crotons and distributed them to the people in the city, so they were quickly brought under control. For the rest of the severe cases, we change the prescriptions according to their conditions. The most commonly used are changshan, turtle shell, cohosh, aconite and cuttlefish bone, but now Annan City is short of these herbs, especially when the epidemic has been happening for a long time. It's time, there are many serious illnesses outside. Not to mention the rare medicinal materials such as turtle shells and squid bones, they don't even have many changshan. After thinking for a while, Bai Shan said, I will try my best to find a way. You should try the Artemisia annua juice first. Joe Man can only answer. If Bai Shan didn't have any confidence at all, he would definitely let her go. He said that now, obviously there is not much he can do. Joe Man lowered his eyes. This is the Liazi department, not the Central Plains. They have limited manpower, things happened in a hurry, and the person in charge fell ill. Bai Shan really couldn't do anything. Joe Man took Wu Yin out and asked, do you have anyone available? Wu Yin said, Wu doesn't have military power in his hands, but I have a few disciples who are pretty obedient. Sir, I have orders, so I can let them do it. He paused and then said, although I have seldom come out to pray for sacrifices in the past 2 years, but in the past 10 years, students have presided over them, so there are many people in the tribe who are willing to listen to my orders. Lord, they are limited in strength, but they can do something. Joe Man said, go and call some people, let's try other prescriptions. However, Bai Shan, who she thought was limited in manpower and unable to do anything, turned around and met with the bureaucrats of the Liazi department. He generously wrote 2 letters directly and sent them to Yizhu, Liuzhu and other places, so that the local government offices could help raise funds. Medicinal materials, assist the Liazi department. Both Chief Li and the chief manager were moved, and Chief Li held Bai Shan's hand while supporting his sick body and said, Your Excellency's kindness and merit will never be forgotten by the entire bureaucracy. Bai Shan sighed and said, the people of the Liazi department are also the people of our Jin dynasty, not to mention the princess and the son-in-law are still here. No matter if there is war or epidemic, it is very dangerous for the princess and the son-in-law. Chief Li immediately said, I will send someone to escort the princess and the consort away. Bai Shan shook his head, no need, although Master Zhou said that malaria is not transmitted from person to person, but there are so many ignorant folks. The princess and her son-in-law are returning to the Central Plains at this time, it would be bad if bad news comes out. Besides, the princess is kind and wants to get along with you. The people in the Liazi department advance and retreat together, and will not leave. After a pause, Bai Shan frowned and asked, Chief Li and Mrs. Li are seriously ill, but what about the gentlemen in the house? I haven't seen them sick these 2 days. Chief Li had only one son and one daughter, and the son had been sent away by him long ago. First, he was afraid that he would also contract malaria, and second, he was afraid that if someone really plotted a rebellion, he would die in the battle. But at this time, Chief Li dared not say that the princess and the son-in-law could advance and retreat with the people of the Liazi department. How could the chief's son escape in battle? So Chief Li said, he took people out to buy medicinal materials. There is a shortage of medicinal materials in the city. Medicines are life-saving things. Bai Shan nodded approvingly, and asked, what about the girl? Now the people in the city need to be appeased, and the Li family is the chief of the Liazi department, so we must find someone to appease the people.